Sahil, you've been in Customs on Command for, I believe, just under 2 months, and you've been absolutely crushing it, man. Like when I last checked, you were at, I believe, over 30,000 in cash collected from about $2,000 in ad spend. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong there, which must be over like 50 to 60 grand in contracted revenue, right?
Yeah, approximately. Yep.
Cool, man. Well, I mean, can you just tell people like what you do, how your service works, and just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, we're in visa and immigration advisory. So essentially, like our goal is to like help people out with talent based visas and whatnot. Essentially, um, getting them to a point where they will be able to go after like these highly skilled visas, and these like the people that we work with are going to be like highly skilled immigrants. So essentially the goal is to like bring them to a point where their profile becomes ready for some of these top talent visas, and then like getting their petition ready, filing it, getting them approved, and essentially getting like their immigration journey sorted. Like that's exactly like what we kind of like focus on, is solving immigration problems.
And it's typically for like, people earning above, say, 100,000 a year, right?
Yeah, usually there could be people who are a little bit like different, but essentially a majority of the chunk is going to be people who like make good amount of money, because like the visas that we kind of like go after are going to be like the
Right.
highly skilled visas. So
Yeah, like for doctors and lawyers. Is it doctors and lawyers typically that kind of career path?
yeah, doctors, engineers, researchers, people like that.
Okay, got you, got you. And obviously, okay, so since starting, we have averaged, we just checked today actually in Slack, you've averaged 6 calls a day and you're spending about $50 a day on advertising, which is a really small budget.
Yeah.
That's some pretty exponential growth. What I would love to know though is what were you doing before like Customs on Command, and even before advertising? Like how were you getting leads for the business?
Yeah, mostly it was like organic through podcast, webinars, affiliates, that sort of stuff. We were not doing like any advertisement or anything of that sort. So it was like it wasn't steady, because like you're trying to figure out what basically works and whatnot, and then we moved into like getting like a steady stream of inflows of these leads that we can work with and have a prediction of like how much we need to scale, what our numbers are going to look like, just like more control on like the sales process and the sales funnel in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And how much around were you doing in revenue when you were doing the organic webinars, etc.?
Uh Probably like around, I'm not exactly sure on the number, but I think probably anywhere around like 100, on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how much more? How much have you increased now overall with the
Yeah, I
business?
think we're
Like,
consistently doing above 250
okay.
at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And what made you want to, like, obviously when you were at like 100, 150 and you
Yeah.
wanted to scale, what made you want to get into advertising and add that as a, extra marketing channel for your business?
Yeah, I think like it comes down to like scaling, and also like having a control of the leads directly, because like if you're working with affiliates or like you're doing podcasts or webinars, you basically like do depend a lot on like different people and like how many people they're able to send over to you and whatnot. Like if an affiliate is out, let's say on a vacation for like 30 days, you
Yeah.
literally have your lights off. So essentially like it gives you an option of like scaling out and like reaching to a wider customer base, and especially like if you have a good strategy behind it, it also allows you to like measure your success in terms of like how many leads are coming in through, how many we are converting, and all that sort of stuff. What our goals are. So like I think right now we've been looking into like scaling a little bit more. So then working with you helps from that perspective of like, okay, what should be the ad revenue now in terms of like the leads we can handle, and like what's the blockage in terms of scaling. Because like I think when a lot of people would probably see you and they kind of think like you're only running ads for them, but essentially that's not the case. It's much more than that. Like we're constantly talking about like maybe like last week we were talking about like maybe we want to increase the ad revenue, but
Yeah.
then at the same time we were discussing, do we have the back end to handle that
Right.
revenue? Because you just don't want to like put your money into water. It's like, okay, I just want to run ads, and you have like 10,000 leads and you don't have the bandwidth to handle that lead, so you're just
Yeah.
your money. So I think it's just this entire strategy of like figuring out the right amount of number to run the ads and whatnot, and scaling and like figuring out how many people we need in order to like solve these problems. It's like the entire sales cycle, and you kind of become more self-dependent rather than like
Yeah.
relying on other people.
Yeah, that seems like it's been the biggest shift is like with ads, it's every single day. I mean, that Slack channel's going off. We're getting 5, 6 calls that are qualified as well coming through every single day. And it's so consistent now where it's almost like there's too much. I mean, you had to kind of like shut down your calendar for a few weeks, right? Just so we could
Yeah.
bring on an extra closer to take on the amount of leads you were getting. I think that's like one thing that did you anticipate that when starting with ads, or were you expecting it to be a bit more slow and steady at the beginning?
Yeah, I think I did definitely thought that we'll have leads, but I wasn't expecting like my calendar to be blocked for like next 2 months.
Yeah,
Where like you run into this situation of like how do I take these calls essentially. So
right.
yeah, it definitely, and I also like didn't expect it for us to have like, because like $50 is like the bare minimum you'd probably use to like run ad. It's not like
Oh yeah,
a huge ad spend. So like I definitely wasn't expecting, like I feel like $50 for like 6 calls a day is pretty awesome, honestly. So it's peanuts money, like $10 a day. Like why not? I mean,
right, 100%.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, $50 is extremely low, man, and that just proves that even if like people think when you start ads, you have to have a massive budget and you have to spend a lot. And I mean, you're spending 1.5K per month on ads and generating all these leads,
right.
literally 5 to 6 qualified calls a day, which you're consistently closing as well. And we spoke the other day about even just raising it to 100, but where you're at in terms of bandwidth, like we need to obviously like build out the systems a little bit more, add some extra closers, which we're in the process of doing, just to be able to handle that bandwidth.
Yeah, correct.
And just a follow up question to that. So I think a lot of service companies, like different service companies, are a bit, scared about starting ads just because of what the commitment of spending money to acquire a customer. Most businesses nowadays are just doing organic marketing, and
Right.
the idea of spending money to get customers is a scary thought. What advice would you give to them in making that transition? Because obviously, before you were doing, it seems like a lot of organic marketing. You made that shift to paid traffic.
Yeah.
What would you recommend? And if you were to tell yourself before you started paid ads, what would you say now?
Yeah, I feel like you do both. There is no reason why you want to pick one or the other. It's not a
100%.
battle. Like at the end of the day, you just want like more leads for your customers. So like the more options and more channels that you have, the better it is for your business. Also, like people don't realize, once you do like a lot of these organic marketing and like working through affiliates and whatnot and podcasts and webinar, it has a shelf life. Essentially, like if you're working with like, because like if you're working with person A, he has a certain audience. Maybe for
Right.
like few weeks or few months you'll have consistent leads, and then eventually it will start dropping down because like most of the repetitive customers have already seen the stuff that you have been presenting. So if they are not generating new audience, you're not gonna get new audience.
Right.
So that's number one thing to like keep in mind when you're like working with affiliates. So then you run into this problem of like constantly increasing your affiliate pool or figuring out various different channels of doing podcasts and webinars and educating your audience. So at the end of the day, I feel like it's simply a game of like making sure you're offering like a valuable product and service, and how do you make sure that you're able to like reach out to the audience who's in need of the solution that you're providing. I think it's like as simple as that. So like in my opinion, it's like you kind of want to make sure that yeah, you have like tracking tools in place and you anticipate like this is not going to be for forever, so you want to make sure like you have various different channels,
Right.
because
Yeah. 100%.
I don't need to rely that much on the affiliate side. Like we can work more on like our aspects, increase our ad spend, get more people in, and all that sort of stuff. And on top of that, I think like also allows you to like scale up and measure, because I think with affiliates it's difficult because you'll get like all sort of leads because there is no funnel up front. So
Right.
sometimes you're getting like five really amazing leads in a row, and you think like okay, awesome, like my conversion rate is like 90%, and then all of a sudden you get like 10 non-qualified leads in a row, and then you're like what's going on, because it really
Yeah.
depends like what sort of
100%.
audience that they are catering to that comes to like your plate. So I think like from all those different perspectives, I feel like it's absolutely important to kind of utilize all the channels that you have. And like I personally feel like if you're trying to utilize a channel, the more sophisticated it is, the better it's going to be for you. So you don't have to like bother about making consistent changes and like doing a lot of figuring out like okay, this I don't think like this creative is working, so should I go to another creative? Like how do you measure which creative is
Right.
working? People
Yeah,
don't
that's a
even.
great point. That's what a lot of people don't talk about in marketing is like the ability to measure. And I think that I totally agree that doing, paid advertising and organic, they complement each other. So I think you've been on some big podcasts, and now you have paid traffic, which is also kind of building your brand simultaneously
Right.
as well. But I think the good thing about paid traffic, which some other channels like affiliates potentially miss, is it just comes down to economics. You have macro and microeconomics. And macro is obviously the revenue, the big numbers that you want to be hitting with the business. But what are the microeconomics that make that macro? And it's hard to measure that with affiliates because
Right.
there's a lot of intangibles in that process. But with paid ads, you can measure, okay, like how much is it costing us to get a call? How much is it? How many of the leads do we get actually show up to the calls? What is our
Right.
closing percentage? How much cash are we collecting up front on average? And all
Yeah.
those things help you really predictably project, which we're going to do going into 2025 now, where the business you want to be with the business at certain months and even the next 6 months and the next year, which I
Yeah.
really like about paid ads. I think is that the biggest difference you've noticed where your business is more a bit more black and white now, where it comes down to numbers instead of it's up in the air a little bit. You go into a month not knowing where you're going to be by the end.
Yeah, tons of data to review and figure out what needs to be done and what not. Gives you actionable steps to follow based on the data, and put a lot of structure in as well, which I think is like initially you are like in this rush of like, okay, like I'm getting customers 3, 5,
Yeah,
10, whatnot. But once you reach like a threshold, then you basically want a lot of structure, because then you're tired of like a lot of different pieces which should have been in place before you kind of like get onto this journey of scaling yourself.
yeah, 100%. And just to go back to your customer too. So your customer, someone making typically over 100,000 a year, wanting to move to the United States, wanting to immigrate there. So now with the ads in place, and now after us launching and really dialing in the qualification, how have you found it being able to speak to just consistent, qualified prospects every single day? Was that something that you were struggling with before with organic marketing, or is it just more consistent now and you're talking to every single day as someone who has money and needs what you have?
Yeah, I think both. One is consistent, and obviously, like I think there are like a few different offerings that we do as part of like what we offer. So I think like most of the ads that we get through our funnel is going to be someone which is strictly going to be our like main audience. Like
Yeah,
this is like the main top tier product that we sell, and like the leads that we get through the funnel, like 95% of them are like in that funnel, who basically are going for that offering that we want to sell. With affiliates and other leads, usually you'll get people who probably are like earlier in their career or not making $100,000, then making probably like less money. They have like other goals and other problems, so then we have to do like a twofold solution with them, where we basically first have to solve their immediate problem before they can go into like the talent visa side of things and whatnot, like the EB1 is
yeah.
essentially. So yeah, absolutely, it does solve both the problems like of consistent leads as well as like the leads that we want to cater to.
And obviously, you started out when we start initially launched on paid traffic. You started out taking the sales schools at first, so you were taking the sales schools with all the leads coming in, and we've just recently brought on your first sales closer. Would you would you recommend to other founders to begin taking sales calls first before they build out a team, or would you recommend going straight to getting a closer from your experience?
Yeah, I think in my opinion, you definitely should take the calls first before getting in a closer. And I can understand like why some people might be hesitant of it, because like a lot of people like who are founders are not from sales background. Like I
Right.
myself am not from sales background. But the goal of getting on these calls is to basically you get a variety of customers on these calls, and like after like a month or two, you kind of understand within like the first 5 minutes where this conversation is going to go. Like I
Mm,
usually can now, within first 5 or 10 minutes, I can figure out like whether this person is serious or if he's just here to like get some information, or he is serious but he probably does not want to start up front, or he's skeptical. So like I think if you do the calls yourself, then you can help to train others. If you don't do
right.
that, then you're on the mercy of them, and they might not be subject matter experts. So that's the biggest problem. Like, I mean, you got me a closer. It could be amazing in terms of like closing sales deal, but he's not a subject matter expert. So if
Right.
you just throw him in there, it's unfair to expect that they'll have the answer to the questions of these people, because like they could ask anything of like this entire thing that you're trying to sell, and your closer would not have an answer to that. So like if you have
Right.
got an calls with them, you basically can compile a list of like frequently asked questions and whatnot, frequently asked objections, all those
Yep.
different aspects which you kind of like face on these calls. You can turn that into like a module that your sales closer can basically learn, and like it will help him do his job. So I feel like it's
Right.
absolutely important to like do this yourself as well before you like eventually start pulling people in and have them do it.
Yeah, I would say it's extremely important because I mean, with you now, you bring on a closer, you have dozens and dozens and dozens of sales calls.
Yeah,
You have sales calls of you closing deals, and even sales calls where you didn't close deals, but you know where you could have closed that deal.
right.
And now you can give that to the closer, and that's the best teacher for any closer to come on, like when they come on board, is seeing the founder in action sell their own product, because no one's going to sell your product better than you. So if
Yeah,
the starting point is someone who doesn't have that industry leading expertise like you do in your industry, they're just going to struggle. And the fact that you took all those calls now with the new closer coming in, they have a massive advantage because they can watch those calls, they can see what mistakes you made and also how you close deals as well, and just take that and implement it for themselves. So I think anyone watching this, whether they're either starting or even, I would even say if they're just starting on paid ads, because one thing I think people don't mention is, and you've probably experienced this firsthand, is when you start paid ads, the way you sell to the leads is a little bit different compared to organic, because organic, you're getting people in who know you already, and it's a little bit of an easier sell. Whereas cold traffic, paid advertising, there's a little bit more of a process to actually get them over the line. What were some of the biggest differences you recognized when you started taking sales calls from paid ads?
yeah. I think like the biggest thing is like they definitely are like cold leads. Essentially, like people you get from like podcasts and like webinars and affiliates and whatnot. They kind of like have listened to your thoughts, so there is like a basic
Yeah,
level of trust simply because like they've seen some of your content online, and they like respect your time a little bit more. So
right,
like in those calls, like you immediately have like an like you don't need to establish yourself in terms of like, hey, who we are, what we do and whatnot. They have the basic understanding of like what you're doing, what problem you solve, and then it just catering it to them, fixing your solution into their problem and like working with them. Versus with cold leads that come through like paid ads, they don't have like any idea about like what exactly you do, whether you are
mm,
genuinely someone who's like really good at what you're selling. So they have a lot of hesitations and questions like, who's this guy? Like, I have no idea about him and whatnot. So I feel like initially, some of your time in those cold calls goes into like developing a trust, understanding
yeah,
them. You don't want to like just directly sell them. You kind of like want to understand their situation more, explain your solution more. So one thing that I could usually see is like they would definitely have more questions. So like while you could have like 30-minute call with like a organic lead, you might probably need like 45 minutes or something, like a bit more
right.
time with the paid ad traffic, because you definitely want to answer all their question on the call, just whatever question that they have, and make sure like they feel like their money would be well spent. You want to give them like enough information about the program as well, where they understand, because like the solution that we provide, it's not very widely known yet. So like you just the space itself does not have enough information. So you not only like trying to educate them about your solution, but you're also trying to educate them about the space, like how talent visas work versus like how we can get you achieve the talent visa. So like you basically have to first explain them like the world of EB1A visa, for example, and then you kind of like specifically talk about how to solve their problem. So I think yeah, the biggest one is going to be like you would have people who'd be like little cold and like trying to figure out like what's going to happen on these calls. So but if you have a structure to your call and then you do that on a consistently basis, you kind of like then eventually figure out how to crack
Right. That makes sense.
them.
Cool. Last question, so I wanted to ask you was, a lot of people have a stigma about kind of Facebook ads because they think, well, my industry is higher earners, right? They're earning more money, they're going to be more on LinkedIn, and or they're going to be more on this platform, this platform. From my experience, I've just seen that Facebook, no matter what, has been the highest performer because most people are on Facebook, Instagram, Meta, etc., more than any other platform.
Mm.
From your experience now, would you say that, like, would you recommend, even if you're going after higher earners like you are, which is 100K plus a year earners typically, would you recommend Facebook ads for them?
Yeah, 100%. So I have tried LinkedIn ads as well, a little bit on my own, and I did not found it like very helpful,
Yeah,
honestly. First and foremost, I feel like because I thought the same exact thing. Like my audience is more going to be on LinkedIn. Like these are like
right.
sophisticated people who don't have the time to scroll Facebook and like are just busy with like their structured work and whatnot. But
Yeah,
I don't think like, I mean, even myself, like I don't scroll LinkedIn all the time. You go
right,
there once a day and then come out. Versus Facebook, if you're not doing anything, you just scroll around
right.
for 5 minutes and get back to your work. So I think this is like definitely going to be much higher chances, and everyone should utilize Facebook ads regardless of like the audience that they're kind of like targeting. Because I also thought my audience is not gonna be Facebook heavy or Meta
Right.
heavy, but I think like it has worked out well for us so far in terms of like how we have built these ads.
Yeah, I mean, there's over 2 billion people on the platform, and with something like LinkedIn, LinkedIn is obviously great for getting jobs, probably hiring employees, etc.
Yeah,
The advertising like platform itself is very behind. I mean, the algorithm is nowhere near as strong as Facebook. Facebook just has so much data on the world because a massive percentage of the population is using Facebook, and everyone, pretty much everyone is on either Facebook or Instagram.
yeah,
So the chances of your target market, even if it is a more top of market, more maybe higher earners, more sophisticated audience, they're still going to be on Facebook and Instagram, and they're still going to be scrolling on there. And I mean, the algorithm's just so good. You've probably seen it yourself with Facebook and Instagram, where even if you want to go after a very specific market, it can still get in front of those people, just like you. You know, you get those people on the pools every single day who are in that target market who you want to be working with.
right. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, that's all my questions. I mean, Sahil, do you want to leave any like last thoughts?
No, I'm like, I think if you're looking to scale, in my opinion, I think it's definitely worth giving a shot to Meta ads. There are, of course, going to be layers with it of like what sort of like creatives you're using in terms of like running these ads, how you're like targeting your audience, what the numbers and whatnot. So I feel like sometimes people would create like a regular Instagram post or video and then turn that into a social
Right.
media ad.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how strong of a move that is. So I feel like with you guys, I was able to like figure out multiple aspects of it. It's like what should be the creative, multiple different creatives that we basically tried out. We had like what 20 so far that we
Yep.
have tried in figuring out which one works best, which one does not work best, how to keep the cost low, what are our numbers, do we need to put more money in, do we need to get like more people to get on the call. So all those different aspects on top of like Meta ads in general, I think has been very helpful for us. So I feel like anyone who's in like similar boat with us, who understands like the solution that they're providing to the customers is valuable and want to reach out to like a wider customer base, should definitely like give a try, in my opinion.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to Sahil. Thank you for sharing your experience, and we'll talk soon.